Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Translators On Air. My name is Dmitry and Elena. I'm your host. Joining me today, my incredible co-host, Elena. Hi, Elena.
Hi, everyone.
And our guest today, Jo Rourke. Hi, Jo.
Hi, everyone.
Jo has been a freelance translator, content writer, and copywriter for 40 years. She loves helping people with their writing, whether it's crafting copy, translating into another tongue, or guiding business owners on improving what they already do. She has written for Huffington Post, The Guardian, even Carmichael, and the Writers and Artists Yearbook. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about bringing back the free into the freelance and the Challenge 500 that Jo has developed for her fellow translators. But before we do that, I'd like to make a few announcements. As always, the first season of Translators On Air has been sponsored by our friends at SmartCat. SmartCat developed a translation platform where you can get more translation jobs, and you can also use the SmartCat their cat tool absolutely for free. So if you're interested in that, check out SmartCat by clicking the green button below this video, or if you're watching this in the recording, you can always click the first link in the description. All right, we have a few viewers joining us today. Hello, Stacy, Aurelie, Hagen, Christina, Ronnie, Eleanor, Catherine, and Elizabeth. Thank you so much for tuning in. For those of you who are watching this for the first time, this is a live webinar, so everything is happening here in real time. You can actively use the chat window on the right-hand side. You can say hi or where you're from. If you have a specific question for Jo, Elena, and me to discuss, you can use the suggestion box below this video. There is an orange button that says ask a question or suggest a topic, and we'll be more than happy to discuss your questions. And of course, these webinars are best enjoyed with friends and colleagues. So if you have a few seconds, we would appreciate it if you could share the link to this webinar on Twitter or Facebook. You can do it right now. And invite your friends and colleagues to join us. We still have a few spots, and the more people, the merrier. All right, Jo, over to you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here today, and I think I saw that there were a couple of questions already. So this is my first Translators On Air episode. So is it better if I just go through some of the questions, or what do you think?
Well, actually, we have a kind of a conversational style of our webinar. So before we jump to the questions, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background in the translation industry, and how did you become the translator, basically?
Sure. Well, it started quite a long time ago, as you kindly said. So it was when I was in university, and I had a lot of friends who were international students, specifically friends from Spain and from Latin America. And I started to help them with different things that they needed, whether it was application forms for jobs, CVs, anything like that. And through that, I started to get the translation experience that I wanted. And then I started to work with some of the other departments in university. Two topics that really interest me are history and the environment. So I worked with some of the schools in my university on proofreading things, on research that had come from other countries, and translating research papers, things like that, or even just editing and checking where they needed. And then I started to get paid for it. My first job was, I probably should have paid them because the rate was so low, and I pulled an all-nighter, which is so stereotypical. But I just really got the bug, and I loved it. Then I did that part-time for a number of years until I was able to bring it into some of the full-time jobs that I was doing. So I worked at a research institute and translated a lot of their material, and also checked, proofread, all of those things. And then when my daughter was born in 2012, I decided it would be a great opportunity to strike out fully on my own and set up a business. And that's it. And SilverT Translations were born. And here I am.
So you've been working as a freelance translator for the past 5 years, right?
Sorry, say that again. You broke up a bit.
You've been working as a freelance translator for the past 5 years, right?
For full-time, full-time in my business, 5 years. But yeah, 14 years,
Yeah.
pretty much 3/4 time.
So, and why did you decide to go as a full-time freelancer when your daughter was born?
I thought it was a really good opportunity. We moved home to Northern Ireland, where the cost of living is a lot lower than it was in London, where we had been living before. And well, basically in London, with the price of rent and mortgage, it would have been really difficult to take the leap of maybe the 2 or 3 months that wouldn't be so profitable as I was setting up. Whereas at home, with family support as well, for childcare, things like that. And then I felt I had a bit more of a safety net, a bit more of a cushion, and I guess it gave me a bit of courage. And then also I wanted to, sounds very grand, but set an example to my daughter that you could do something that you loved, and that, okay, it might take some hard work, but that's no bad thing.
Yeah, it's a very great example for your to set up. So, Jo, did you have this idea of Challenge 500 for quite some time now, or how did it come about?
It was started off as a very selfish thing, because I wanted to finish 2016 off on a real high. I've just had my 3rd child in February, so I was aware that coming to the end of the year, I really wanted to, I guess, finish, like I said, on a high note, but also to remind myself of all the good things. It was a very busy period, and it's easy in busy periods to just keep accepting work and get buried. And I just thought that I wanted to remind myself of why I became a freelancer, and also that I was the one that had the choices. So I could choose which work I wanted to accept. I could set my rates, and there was no reason why I had to accept a low rate or a project that I didn't like, or put up with a client whose behavior or treatment of me wasn't exactly what I wanted. But it takes a little bit of courage to do that. So naturally, I decided to ask other people to do it with me. And I blogged about it, and I very hopefully said, oh yeah, it's going to challenge 500 freelancers, because I liked the way it sounded. But then I was really astonished that I was getting, 10 people, 20 people, 50, 100. And I thought maybe it actually would be possible. So I did the first run of it in December, and it was great. We had a closed Facebook group to give each other support and talk about the challenges that we were doing each day. There's 5 days of challenges, and that really helped me. It was strange because at the beginning I thought, well, I'm the one setting the challenges, I'm sending out the workbooks. Would I really get as much out of it as I hoped participants would? But I probably got even more, because people were coming to me with questions, or their little moments of inspiration when they were going through the exercises. And then that in turn inspired me, and it was great. It was a really rewarding way to finish the year.
So for those of our viewers and listeners who haven't read your description of Challenge 500, could you tell in a couple of sentences what that's all about?
A couple of sentences? I'm not very good at that.
Okay.
A couple of paragraphs.
A couple of paragraphs would do it well.
Yeah, we can remember we get paid for how long things are. So yeah, I decided 5 days. On the first day, I wanted participants to get really selfish for the day and figure out the things that really matter to them the most. So I set up a series of exercises on figuring out your important values. So no judgment on what they are, and whether or not that was travel, exercise, family, faith, whatever it would be. But you decide on that and figure out the areas in your life which are the most important to you. The next day, then we moved on to calculating our rates. So having a good, long, hard look at the calculations behind things. So whether that was looking at your own outgoings and expenses, and then bringing it through to, again, in line with day one, when you figured out what you want from life, figuring out how long you want to work, how many days a week, how many hours in a day, and then coming out with your rate at the end of that. And that was a real eye-opener too for people, as to whether or not what they were quoting was in line with what they should be charging. Day three, look at your clients, your existing client base, and figure out who you really, really like working with, who needs a little bit of a polish up, and who really isn't bringing very much to the table. And then on day 4 and 5, you really took action with the clients. Day 4 was a scary day, because you got in touch with clients who you needed to raise the rates with, or some clients who perhaps you needed to end the working relationship with. And then finally, the last day was the happy day, because it was Friday, Feel Good Friday. And that's where you looked at that client list again and looked at your really good guys, the clients who are really awesome. And then you get the most out of that relationship too. You contact them and ask them for a testimonial. And so I provided a template for that testimonial, and we sent it out, got some great testimonials back. And the little extra challenge was that people would actually put those testimonials up on their LinkedIn profile, their Pros profile, or their website straight away. So that's Challenge 500 in a very large nutshell. So
great. And, can I ask, how did you decide the topics for each and single day?
I guess I looked through the thought process that I went through. A few years ago, I had a really, really tough time in my business. I actually posted about it last year, and I was really nervous about posting it because it was very personal. And it was one of the most read blogs that I'd ever done. And I received really lovely comments back from people saying that it was great that someone admitted that things aren't always rainbows and sunshine and unicorns. And what I said in my post was how I came out of that period as well. And it really took a conscious decision for me to move away from the clients that were just really wearing me down. So I had some non-payers, late payers, and as you know, that can be just so stressful when you have all of your bills to pay and rent, your food, everything you need to pay for. And I also had some other clients who were rude, would be too strong a word, but certainly very abrupt and really not very considerate of my time, and expecting instantaneous responses when they would take days to get back to me on one linguistic query. And I decided, right, I'm going to move away from them. So I just based it on my thought process. I figured out the things that were important to me. I then figured out what that meant to how much I wanted to work. And from that, how much I needed to earn to cover everything and be comfortable. Then I looked at the qualities of my clients, good and bad. And then I went from there. I either raised my rates or ended the working relationship with the clients that it wasn't really going so well with. And also the little bonus was the testimonials at the end. So the clients that got to stick around had to write me testimonials. So that was, I based it on my own experience.
Did you do anything else in terms of preparation? So that was basically the thought process that you used a few years back, and you use it again to prepare the themes of the topics of the days of the challenge. Was there anything else you needed to do to prepare for the challenge?
Yeah, because obviously a lot of the stuff was just all my notes and the things that I wrote and the thought process that I went through. But I couldn't really just, talk to participants and say, yeah, do this. So I decided to try and make up these daily challenges, exercises, if you like, to guide them through the process. Because I think sometimes we know a lot of this stuff logically, but it's very hard until someone teases it out of us to be able to implement it and go forward. And sometimes you just need a logical step 1, step 2, step 3 process, and that will bring you to hopefully the result that you want. So I guess it was in my head, but then it had to be put on paper.
And how long did it take for you to prepare the exercises? And did you use any tools or anything that would help you to prepare those exercises?
The exercises themselves weren't too difficult. That's something that I want to stress. It's not rocket science. It's nothing particularly groundbreaking. It's just sensible stuff. But I did realize that I had to make it look halfway attractive. So I used my favorite tool in the world, Canva, so canva.com. It's like a graphic design tool for idiots like me. You have all of the artistic promise of, a bottle of wine. So I used those to design them, make them look vaguely pleasing to the eye. And also then part of it is giving participants the templates that they need. So they had to be written out, put into Microsoft Word, and then they could go out to everybody every day.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Did you use any kind of email software like MailChimp or something like that?
Oh, yes, I did. I used MailChimp at that time. I have now moved to ConvertKit, which I really like as well. But MailChimp was brilliant for coming up with attractive email templates. I think it's a brilliant tool for email newsletters and for daily challenges, like for Challenge 500. It was perfect because I could arrange everything to go out at a certain time every day. And also further to that, it could also be arranged by time zone. So part of the challenge was that it would go at 8 a.m. wherever you are in the world. So each day you knew that it would be waiting for you. It's not like whoever's on who's in Australia need to wait until I get up in the morning. It's automatically going to go. And I find that was brilliant. It did take planning, but the challenge itself was very low maintenance for me. It was really just about having the conversations with participants in the Facebook group or on Twitter or over email, because all of the technical stuff had already been sorted out. It probably took me 2 weeks. I worked on it for 2 weeks before the challenge actually went live. I decided to do it probably fairly last minute, so maybe 3 weeks before the challenge went live, which was December the 5th. So about 3 weeks previous to that, I decided that I would do it. I do sometimes like to be spontaneous. And then probably 2 weeks preparation. And the whole time was making sure it was on social media and getting anyone to, it was on the open mic, for example, as well, so that people would know about it. And any friends or colleagues who were interested in it, they were really kind and told other colleagues as well. Because it's not just for freelance translators, it's really for any freelancer. And you know, whether you're a graphic designer or writer, interpreter, whatever. It's basic stuff that works for everyone.
Mm-hmm. 5 days looks like quite a short period of time to change a lot of things. What kind of results have you got from the challenge, you and other colleagues probably?
Yes, you're right. 5 days is a very short period of time. Part of the reason for it being short was probably the timing. It was at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. I figured that people were either already starting to relax for Christmas if they celebrated it, or they were really busy. A lot of colleagues have a very, very busy time at the end of the year. And so I wanted it to be manageable. I wanted you to be able to measure the change. So really, day 2, when you calculate your rates, and then day 4 and 5, where you take action on either ending a client relationship or getting your testimonials. Those were the days where you saw something measurable. So from day 2, when you got your rate, you knew that you were going to be able to apply that going forward. And for a lot of people, it was a hard day, because it meant digging out all your bank statements, looking at receipts. So it was pretty boring sometimes, because it required you to go through it in detail. But I found that it really helped me when I did it, and I just wanted to share that with colleagues. Mm-hmm. I also recommended a really good resource from Luke Spear. Mm-hmm. He wrote the Translator's Sales Handbook, and I found that to be a superb resource. And his spreadsheet for calculating rates, which is much more complex than mine, it's so useful. So you could use my approach, which is very simple, or Luke's spreadsheet, which is free as well. But no matter which approach you took, you still needed to get all your paperwork out, because I think that's unavoidable. Otherwise, you don't really know what you should be charging. You're just thinking, I'll pick a figure out of the air. And I think that it needs to be a little bit more definite than that. So you asked me about results. So the people who participated, I would say, well, I'm trying to think of how many. Would need to come back to you on a number. But quite a lot of them decided to email their clients and raise their rates. Mm-hmm. So that was a scary day for a lot of people. But a lot of people had great results in that their clients came back. They may not have accepted the elevated rate that they first gave, but they did a bit of compromise. Usually because they went in a little bit higher than they were expecting to get accepted. And they came out with something that they were a lot happier with. Probably one of the happiest days though was the Friday, because it's so nice to come back with responses from clients telling you that you've been doing a great job. And some of the testimonials that participants posted on the group were just brilliant, you know, telling them things that they hoped they were providing for clients, but to see it in black and white, and to feel valued by your clients was brilliant for so many people. So yeah, measurable results were the testimonials that they got for their website, etc. And also several people successfully raised their rates as well. So they were probably the two main things.
Yeah, that sounds really great.
Yeah, and Matвей, you mentioned that you had a Facebook group as well. So were there some kind of accountability? Did the members had to share their experiences and share their results and what they achieved so far? Yeah,
it was each day I would do a post at the beginning of the day. One to direct people. So each day people get an email. It would give a link to the daily challenge page. You would get a video of me, which is the bad part. And you would also get the workbook that you could download. So each day I would post a link in the Facebook book, just in case they didn't get the email. And then I would go through some of the things that I had done, as I was going through the challenge again myself. And then from that, there were lots of shoot off posts from people saying, oh, I just tried this, or sometimes looking for encouragement, especially on day 4 when they had to either end client relationship or raise their rates. And also people came on with so many moments that were just, we call them aha moments, where they realized things, just a little light bulb went off. Day 1 was a really good day for that, where people were trying to figure out what mattered to them most. And so many people were so surprised by the results, especially parents, because I'm a parent and I would always say, oh yes, family are my priority. They are always number 1. But what I urged everyone to do in the exercise is just be honest and selfish for the day and say, but these things matter to me too. It doesn't mean you love your children any less. And of course they are the priority, and you're not going to say, oh my goodness, I have the chance for this awesome job, so I'm not going to feed you for a week. You know, that's never going to happen. Parents, nobody's going to do that. But it was really lovely to encourage people to say, no, just for today, tell me what you want. Tell me what really makes you tick. What would you do? It was full of questions on, if you didn't have this responsibility, what would you do tomorrow? Or what are things that you're doing at the moment but you really hate? You know, just get in the nitty-gritty of what people really love doing. And that was a great day. It's probably a really good way to start the challenge, because people opened up and said, you know, this is something I discovered about myself today. And also then when we moved on to day 2 and we looked at rates, that was really good too, because there's so much around rates in the freelance world, and there's so much secrecy, and there's so much, I'm going to try not to swear, trash talking about rates, either on the bottom end of the scale or the upper end of the scale. And it really, really irritates me. So this was just a way of everyone, you didn't have to share any numbers if you didn't want to, but it was just being open about the process. So the Facebook group was probably, for me, it was the best part of it. And it was lovely to see the encouragement and inspiration.
I really like your approach to determining the rates, because it's very different, also depending on which part of the world a freelance translator or other freelance professional lives in. Because, well, for example, Dmitry and I, we both translate from English into Russian, but he lives in Canada and I live in Russia, and the cost of living in Russia is much lower than in Canada. And while on the one hand, I don't want to encourage bottom feeders and probably charge much lower than he does, just because I don't think it's fair for Russian translators living in other parts of the world. On the other hand, I don't have to charge as much as someone living in Canada or in the US. But that basically means that I can probably do some types of translation that are historically paid worse or paid lower than other types of translation, and I can do it without sacrificing my lifestyle, the way I want to live. And it really depends on the number of hours that a person wants to work in a week. So I think it's a really great and fair way to determine what you can charge. Yeah,
I think I actually did a live chat about rates back in October, and that was, I had panelists, a series of panelists, and they were from all over the world. And so there was a huge range. We had translators who translated from Spanish into English, and they were based in Europe. And we had translators in the same combination, but were based in Argentina, in Colombia, and the difference was enormous. But what wasn't different was calculating it. So you have to take so many things into consideration. So in fact, the numbers themselves are almost irrelevant as long as you have figured out what you need to cover. During the chat, Tanya, a colleague, had shared her process and some of her rates. And I know that for some colleagues in Argentina, they said that those rates would probably not be possible to charge where they were, but also what they would cover in terms of expenses was totally different. So it's all about what you are spending, or what you need to spend your money on, so that I guess the numbers themselves don't matter as long as they add up for you based on where you are in the world, I think.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. And you mentioned the LuxPairs calculator several times before. I think it's a great tool. I can also recommend it. It's very comprehensive, and for anyone who is looking to really understand your financial situation and having a better idea of your finances and all your expenses, it takes into consideration a lot of factors. So we're probably going to put a link in the show notes after we publish this webinar on Bilkomike. So I think it's a great tool, and it would help a lot of people. And it's free, so that's great too. The difficulty with rates I have personally is that, like Elena mentioned, we all live in different markets, different parts of the world. Even though we work in the same language pair, sometimes it's impossible to have similar rates because you're in the different parts of the world. One thing I don't understand, though, is when translators who live in Russia, for example, they charge Russian rates to clients who live in Canada, for example, or in the United States, because I mean, we live in a very globalized society. It's a globalization everywhere, and we really need to play our cards right and make it work in our advantage and not the other way around. So what I would advise to everyone who is living in the market with lower incomes per capita and lower expenses, if you're targeting clients outside of your country, you should also understand how their market works, how their rates work, what's a decent rate for them, and you should act accordingly. I mean, you're a professional, and who wants to work with someone who is willing to do work for peanuts, as they call it, when you can hire someone who can guarantee the quality and who can guarantee a higher rate. And when clients are looking for translators and they see this huge range of rates from 0 cents to 500 cents or whatever, it's really difficult for them to figure out how to find a reliable translator and what's a decent rate and what's not a decent rate. So that's a complicated issue, and probably it's a topic for a different discussion.
We've got a question from Ronnie just regarding what you just said. Would you suggest adjusting rates by country? Would you, Dmitry?
I personally, I would suggest adjusting rates by country, but I would target countries that have higher incomes, higher salaries, and if you're in a country that has a worse economy, you should always adjust your rates. I mean, it makes perfect sense logically. Why would you want to work at the lower rates when your clients can perfectly accept higher rates because it's normal for them? I mean, if they look around in their own market, if they ask around for a translator and they see that the higher rate is pretty much standard there. So even if you live, I don't know, Brazil, Russia, Ukraine, Uganda, or whatever, if you're targeting clients in Europe or United States or Canada, I think you should adjust your rates to what is considered normal in their market. Otherwise, you might scare them, or even worse, you might hurt your profession in the long run, because clients might get used to lower rates, and they might come to expect that translation is a cheap service, and it's not. That's my take. I don't know. That's my opinion.
I think that the subject of rates, like you said, is probably a whole topic on its own. But one thing that I think is important wherever you're based, and it could maybe, I don't know if it would help answer this question, but try very hard whenever you're setting, when you're doing your proposal, is to think of the value of your service for the client. So it's the perceived value for whatever you're providing to them. So say this probably works more for direct clients than agency clients, admittedly. I work with a lot of marketing agencies or design agencies. So just like I adjust other things to suit their market. So for example, I don't just tell them the price over email. They expect a 8-page, 9-page proposal, telling them what I'm going to do, what it's going to look like, how long it's going to take, what the flow of the project will be, how often they can expect communication, when will they receive a draft, all of those things. It'll have my terms and conditions, the terms of the contract. There'll be a space for them to sign, all of those things, because that's what they expect. That's what they're getting from their graphic designer. That's what they're getting from their web designer. Anyone else that they use, that's what they'll produce. So they expect something from me. When it comes to price, I will have an idea. I usually slot into an overall project. So I'll have an idea of the value of that project, and then it's up to me to work out the value of my part to them, taking me out of the equation entirely. I know what my rate is because I've worked it out based on my own expenses and my own life. So I take that to one side. I'm always going to charge that, but I need to figure out how much it is worth to them. What are my services worth to them? And then I go from there. So that way it kind of takes out the country, because you're focused on the company and the job that they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and going back to adjusting rates, depending on in which country you live, something that I really enjoy about working with clients from Europe and the US is that I can afford working much less than my colleagues in Europe and US, or my colleagues in Russia who work with Russian agencies for those rates that Russian agencies pay. So I personally, I don't work I don't do as much client work. I don't work full time, so to say, but I also have time on other projects, on side projects, on developing my business, on taking it in the direction that I wanted to take to go. So I have time for other things which are business related, which might not be paid at the moment, but I can still afford doing it. So, and I think it's a great way. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I guess we can sum up it when it comes to rate, be selfish and think about you, your family, and your business first, and then everything else.
Exactly.
We have a few questions. We have a question from Stacy. She's asking about the Challenge 500 and the experience. How much experience did the linguist have to get in order to get the most out of this?
Oh gosh, I had people take part who had just finished university and were starting their career. Obviously, there were parts of the exercise that were easier for them, harder for them than others. So for example, they wouldn't have a huge client base in order to be able to figure out, I guess, a big study on what you like and what you don't like. But all of the other elements they were able to do. So I guess the answer would be you would need to be working as a translator, but you don't necessarily have had to be working as a translator for very long. So I had people there who'd been working as a translator for less than a year. Equally, then people who with 20 years experience, because you can always improve.
Yeah, that's a smart approach. You can always improve your processes, and when you have these challenges, it always makes you think and take a step back and analyze your business and your situation.
Yeah, and it's something too that you can revisit every few months, because sometimes you accept something because maybe you were having a bit of a dry spell, but as the months go on, you think, I don't really like this subject, or gosh, I didn't realize that client was a little bit rude, or just things progress, or you find that you've accepted a rate that was a little bit lower, or maybe it's on the flip side in that you've started to implement some of the elements from the previous challenge, and you realize that you need to start sending out those letters again. So you need to get some testimonials, or you need to, I guess, end the working relationship with some of the clients that you maybe weren't brave enough to do so the first time. So, and also your priorities can change. Perhaps you've recently had a family, you've recently got married, or various economic things have changed for you. So you'll revisit your values and things that matter to you, and then you start again. So it's something that can be revisited.
Are you going to have another Challenge 500?
Yes, I am. And it's going to be in September this year. I'm actually going to be taking the summer off because my eldest daughter starts school in September. So I really want to have a summer with the kids. And I guess I'm remembering the free in freelance in that I can do that. So I'm really looking forward to that. And again, because I'm selfish, I thought September would be a good time to pick things up again, and I'll probably need to do Challenge 500 myself, because I don't like to do these things alone. Then I'll invite people again.
Have you thought about any sort of other challenges or new additions, maybe revisions to your current topics that you have on the Challenge 500?
Yeah.
Were there any requests maybe from translators?
Yeah, I have had a couple of requests for different things. Some people have asked that we could maybe go into detail on each of the daily challenges would have their own challenge. But I haven't got any further with that, if I'm honest, because I've been a bit busy. So, no, I'm not sure. Other people have also asked that it would run all the time, so that you could sign up at any time and then just have the emails come to you. And I actually put that out to my subscribers and asked them what they thought. And a lot of people came back and said that the biggest benefit of doing the challenge was doing it with other people. So doing it together, it was the motivation. Sometimes it could be that you'll have talked with someone on the group and they said, oh, I'm going to send out my letter to raise rates tomorrow. Okay, I'll do that too. It was the encouragement. So I think that certainly for this year, it will run on a set week. So it'll be a specific week for people to sign up for, because the motivation and encouragement comes from the group.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I think it works best when there is a specific time and date that's set in stone, because if you sign up for something and you expect that you're going to receive emails right away, you might put that off, or it might pile up under the avalanche of work-related emails, and you just might completely ignore it. But when you have a specific date in the calendar, so I think it's makes more organized and makes you more, I don't know, responsible.
I agree.
And also probably if there were a Facebook group that would provide support all the time, that would also well, some people would probably procrastinate about doing the tasks, because they would know that we can get support, I don't know, next week as well. So the limitations sometimes do a great job of pushing people forward. So
yeah, I think so. And some of the Eva, who's one of the people who took the challenge in January, she took so much action. That was the thing about the challenge, about taking action, because we know all of these things, but we don't do anything. And she was like superstar, like, I don't know, top of the class, because she finished setting up the website, started a blog, had the website translated into 3 languages, and she's got a social media presence now, and she started working for direct clients now before she was with agencies. She's become really clear on her specialist subjects that she translates about, and now blogs specifically directed at clients for that. The action that she has taken is incredible, and she genuinely, it's not just me saying it, she credits it to having that focused week where she took all of that action, rather than, like you said, oh well, it's just sitting in my inbox, so that's fine, or oh, the Facebook group is there all the time. So I think by having it as an evergreen thing, so they could do it anytime, would dilute it. Exactly. Part of the challenge is that you've got me in your inbox every day for a week, and there's a lot of other people. It's like, I think it's the same as exercise. If you join a club, or if you have friends who are exercising and you've agreed that you're going to meet them at a certain time, you're much more likely to do the exercise, because you don't want to let them down. Whereas if it's just you, I'll do it in an hour. I'll do it tomorrow. But if it's a specific time, you're accountable to other people.
But that's interesting, that what you told us about that participant who took a lot of action. Those actions were even not part of the challenge, so to say. Nope. She just decided to take this opportunity, jump on it, and do everything that she had ever postponed.
She really did. And that's the thing. There wasn't a day that was about setting up a website. There wasn't anything about, well, I suppose some of the exercises on figuring out your priorities and values, maybe brought her towards highlighting her specialisms, but really they were not related. She said she really just got into a habit of taking action, because she took action every single day for a week. And I guess I'm sure there are studies that say you need to do something a certain number of times before it becomes a habit. And for her, it seems like it was 5 times. So 5 days, and then she kept going. It's inspirational.
I mean, I think a lot of translators are they need this like first step, and after you take this first step, and it's the most difficult part. That's why I guess you're doing this with a lot of other people, because when you're in a group of people, it's much easier to make this first step as a group rather than doing it on your own and, I don't know, loving you because you haven't done something in a while, and then having self-pity and self-regret and all these things. But when you're in a group, it's much easier, and once you take the first step, you realize that it's not rocket science, like you said. There's nothing difficult about it. It just, you have to take action, and taking action, it can take you really, really far.
Yeah, I think so too, and it becomes kind of addictive, because it's a good feeling to have taken the action, and then you want more good feeling.
Yeah.
And like our viewer Ronnie mentioned in the comments right now, first step equals kick in the pants. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's what we need.
By the way, we have another question from Ronnie, which has to do with bringing back the freelance. He asks, do you observe national or local holidays? It means not working on the days of refraining from work on those days.
Do I personally?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, like you said earlier, Elena, I don't work full time either. So I very much build it around my family, my interests. So again, like I mentioned earlier, after I went through that tough time in my business, I realized that I was working on things that I didn't hate them, but I really didn't like them. And I was doing it because I just thought, oh, it's a job, I'll just accept it. And when I looked at, well, my whole business life seriously, I realized that there were certain things that I wanted to work on, and I didn't want any of the other stuff. And part of that too was then realizing that I needed to raise my rates in order to be able to work less and on the things that I liked. So in years gone by, I always worked over holidays. I always, if any big jobs came in, I just accepted them. I didn't worried about the timing afterwards. But now I try to be more considered. I think that probably it came after a Christmas period where I accepted a book translation, and I had to translate a book in about 6 weeks. Part of that was over Christmas. So there was one day where I didn't work, and that was it. And for me, that was the last time I did that. So yes, now I always try to observe holidays. I have a proper weekend. Just, yeah, I'm a bit more free. What about you, Dmitry? Do you observe national holidays?
I try to. I mean, if I do not observe national holidays, that means that I am working and my wife is not working because she's working in the office. So obviously she's gonna have a holiday. So, and when you're working and your wife has a holiday, there's gonna be some tension in there. I gotta say that. And you know, the perfect formula for your life is happy wife, happy life. So that's why I try to avoid working on weekends, on holidays. I really try. Sometimes it doesn't work out very well, especially if it has a very lucrative project that can bring in a lot of cash into the family. But as a rule of thumb, I try to avoid working on holidays and weekends.
Yeah, it's basically the same for me, but it's also, again, it's a bit different because sometimes I have the national holidays in Russia and national holidays in the countries where my clients are mainly based. They rarely coincide. We even have Christmas on different dates. But I also try to observe the national holidays for the reasons Dmitry mentioned. Because I just want to have time to spend with my family. That doesn't mean that I never take work on our national holidays, because it's basically business days. It's work. for my clients, and sometimes I do make exceptions, but I always try to take less work on those days and just to compensate. But I can work during the holiday periods when colleagues who are based in Europe and the US, for example, on Christmas, I can work freely. And I also think that my clients, especially agency clients, really appreciate that because they know that they have someone they can rely on for taking work during those periods. So it's a nice bonus.
I think for me, I'm quite fortunate in that I translate from Spanish into English, and it's mostly Spain Spanish, rather Latin American Spanish, and Spain have a lot more holidays than we do, so they're more likely to be on vacation than me, so it's fine.
Always a fiesta.
Yeah, because they like to make a bridge, a puente, so if there's a holiday anywhere near the weekend, they just take it right through. So yeah. It's a good way to operate.
We do same thing here in Canada. If we have at least one official holiday every month, except maybe for one month here. So and then most of the time we have like long weekends. So we don't work Fridays, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, and Monday after this. So good ways to plan trips and family gatherings, stuff like that. Jo, I have a question for you. It seems to me that those challenges are becoming more and more popular. I've recently seen another challenge organized by Simon Kharmeyev. I don't know if you know him. He has a Facebook group called Successful Freelance Translators. He also has some sort of a challenge weekly. I didn't take part in it, but I saw something on Facebook, and there is always a great response to it, and people are really want to take part in those challenges, and probably someone would love to organize a challenge themselves. Can you give some sort of advice or word of warning to anyone who is willing to start their own challenge?
Sure. First of all, I think you need to pick something that you know a lot about, which probably sounds like a silly thing to say, but there's really no point in trying to come up with a challenge when it's going to be so much effort for you to research it in order to be able to put on a good challenge. It needs to be something that you've already mastered yourself. The next thing that I would recommend, which is not what I did, is to give yourself a decent amount of time to plan it, and also to publicize it, and then to design it. I know that a lot of people say that having attractive materials or something that is really slick isn't needed. I would disagree. I think that in order for people to feel like they are doing a proper challenge, you need to have either exercises or a workbook, or there needs to be an interactive method, and that needs to work well, and it needs to look like it's, if not professionally put together, that someone has gone to a lot of effort. If you need help with that, or any of those elements that you aren't an expert in, I would advise you to get someone who is an expert. So, for example, I run a copywriting course for translators. So I'd already designed materials and workbooks, so I was confident with that part. But when it came to having a landing page with a video for each day, and also a point where people can download the materials, I wasn't confident in putting that together. So I got a web designer to help me with that. So I think that it's important to know your own strengths and know what you're good at. By all means, do the things that you're good at. But for the things that you're not so good at, you're going to waste so much time, and it's going to be so stressful, and you're probably not going to be pleased with the result. So just get some help. The next thing I would say is get an email marketing solution. There's free ones. MailChimp is free, and it's excellent, and it's really intuitive. And that's, for me, the best way for you to get your challenge out to the participants every day. And the final thing is having a Facebook group. It was brilliant, and it was the best thing about it for me and also for the participants. So those would be my steps. Pick something that you know a lot about, and also that you're not going to get sick of, something that you like. The next thing is to plan it and give yourself enough time to plan it and implement it and publicize it. Next thing is to get help if you need it. And the last thing is to get a Facebook group. Those would be my 4 tips.
Yep.
Great. So now everyone who wants to start their own challenge know what to do.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much, Jo, for sharing this with us. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. And I was actually really curious about this challenge, and I'll think about taking it when you launch the next edition of this challenge in September.
You know, you're more than welcome.
Thank you, everyone who joined us today, and to everyone who watched this video or listened to the recording on iTunes or SoundCloud. Please feel free to check out the website of our sponsors at smartcat.ai. It's the first link in the description, or you can do it right now by clicking the green button below this video. Also, don't forget to share this episode with your friends and colleagues, and subscribe to our mailing list at translatorsonair.com so that you don't miss any other episodes. And I think that's it for today. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.